The sizzling hot Kia Telluride has been refreshed for 2023, along with it some updated design changes, as well as a new grille up here that looks more like the concept that actually previewed the Telluride back in 2016. I think this refresh looks really, really good. Before, I thought it looked like it was wearing braces with the chrome look. Up front, we have LED lighting standard. All of the lights you see here are going to be light-emitting diodes, even the LED turn signals, which are still amber like they were last year, but unfortunately, they no longer have that distinctive rectangular outline that made the Telluride stand out in the sea of other crossovers out there on the road. But I really like what they did with everything else. At 196.9 inches long with a 114.2-inch wheelbase, the Telluride and its sister, the Hyundai Palisade, are on the upper end of the size spectrum for three-row crossovers in America, but that space at the upper end is getting a little bit more crowded this year because we now have the new larger Mazda CX-90, the Honda Pilot, and the brand new Toyota Grand Highlander. Now the Honda Pilot, it's actually 3 inches longer than the Telluride, but it has less ground clearance. It has 7.3 inches standard. The Telluride has 8 inches standard, but even the rugged Trailsport version of the Pilot, which is the equivalent to a Telluride X Pro, it has 8.3 inches of ground clearance. The Telluride X Line and X Pro both have 8.4. The rear end didn't receive too many changes for 2023. We still have the R-shaped LED taillights with the red turn signals, but the bumper was smoothed out and given a metal look finish on all trim levels. But if you go with an S trim or higher, these exhaust tips will have the shiny chrome finish you see here. I do wish they had split them into an actual dual exhaust setup like you see on a Ford Explorer or something like that, but at least we have these interesting shapes down here. Now, the one thing I also really wish that they had fixed was getting rid of the Kia logo. Now, I love the Kia logo, it looks really good, but having two words spelled out stacked on top of each other like that, it just looks a little bit too busy in my eye. I kind of wish they would have gotten rid of this and moved Telluride up here. Standard active safety features on the Telluride include adaptive cruise control with highway drive assist, a driver attention monitor, a traffic sign recognition system, lane departure warning with lane keeping assist and lane following assist, a blind spot monitor, rear cross traffic alert and avoidance, auto emergency braking with pedestrian, cyclist, and junction turning assist, as well as a safe exit assist and a rear occupancy alert system. Optional equipment includes enhanced automatic emergency braking with steering assist, front parking sensors, reverse automatic braking, a surround view 360-degree camera, a blind spot camera system, and highway drive assist 2, which features automated lane changes. Kia keeps things simple with the Telluride, giving you one engine choice, a 3.8-liter naturally aspirated V6. The Hyundai Palisade has the same exact engine, but the Palisade is actually built in Korea, while the Telluride here is built in the state of Georgia. Now, this engine produces 291 horsepower, 262 pound-feet of torque, and is available with front-wheel drive or on-demand all-wheel drive. All X-Line and X-Pro models will come with the all-wheel drive standard. Fuel economy is rated at 21 miles per gallon combined for the all-wheel drive and 23 for the front-wheel drive models. Now, if you want a more efficient three-row crossover, Toyota will hook you up because we've got the Highlander hybrid, the Grand Highlander, which comes with 2 hybrid powertrains, but also Mazda as well with that new CX-90 because both CX-90 variants are actually hybrids. One of them is a plug-in hybrid, which is not something you can say about any Highlander model. If you want to tow with your Telluride, you certainly can do that on models with the factory tow hitch. All standard Tellurides come with 5,000 pounds of towing capacity, but the X Pro model bumps it up to 5,500, and X Line and X Pro models both feature a tow mode that utilizes a rear load leveling suspension. Front seat comfort in the Telluride is one of the best in this class. These front seats are 14-way power adjustable with 4-way lumbar and power adjustable extended thigh cushion. You can't split each side like you can on a Lincoln, but honestly, that's a little bit too far in my opinion anyway. Now the passenger side seat has a 10-way power adjustable seat, only 2-way lumbar, but no extending thigh cushion. But it's still nice to see that you can raise the height of the seat and you can tilt the seat bottom itself. Only the driver's side has 2-person memory seats, and we don't have a power tilt and telescoping steering wheel, but this one does have a really good range of motion, so most drivers should be able to find a really nice position. And lastly, on upper trims, you do also get a heated steering wheel. The second row really is the place to be and is a main selling point for the Telluride, but there is one area where it doesn't perform as well as some models out there. Now, these captain's chairs are standard on anything above the EX trim. LX and EX are offered with a bench seat back here, but everything else is going to work with these captain's chairs. They are heated and ventilated on this trim. We also have sunshades too, so on this top trim you can block the haters out the window if you want to. But once you put a child seat, if you have young kids like babies and infants and things like that, and you have those fixed position car seats or rear-facing car seats in these captain's chairs, and you also have kids that need to get to the third row, options like the Nissan Pathfinder, the Volkswagen Atlas, and the Chevy Traverse make it easier to move the second row forward while keeping those types of seats in place. The Kia here is not as good. Now, they do make it easy to get back there by having these easy, quick buttons right here and on the shoulder back there. So I push that, watch what happens. The seat back actually tilts forward and then the seat back moves, or the seat bottom moves. And that's a problem if you have one of those fixed angled car seats, because it's not going to be able to slide forward. It's not going to be able to tilt then slide, whereas those other options can stay in one angle and move forward without adjusting the position of the car seat. So if you have young kids, the Telluride second row is not going to be as flexible as some options out there. In case you were wondering, this is what the second row legroom looks like for a 5'9" adult male, with the second row captain's chairs in the default position and the driver's seat in the spot I left it in when I was comfortably sitting there. Here's what can happen if I slide the captain's chair back. So that's as far back as it will go. So I do have quite a bit of legroom and plenty of footroom under that front seat. Once you're back here, you will realize why the Telluride is so popular. This third row is still one of the most accommodating in the class. It is still a 3-person bench seat. However, unlike that new Mazda CX-90 and its 8-passenger configuration, the third belt comes out of the ceiling instead of out of the seat back. Now, having now sat in the new Honda Pilot and the Grand Highlander, I can say that those do beat this in a few key areas. The Pilot definitely feels like it has a little bit more headroom, and the Grand Highlander's floor is lower to the ground, so your knees don't feel like they're this high up. The Telluride still has that sort of knee-in-your-face feeling. It's definitely not the worst in the class, but it's no longer the best. In case you're wondering, this is what legroom looks like for a 5'9" adult male with the second row captain's chair in the default position. And here's what it looks like with the second row all the way forward. I could actually stretch my legs a little bit and stuff my toes under that second row and pretty much be as comfortable as you could possibly get in a third row before getting into a minivan or a full-size SUV. Getting back out of the third row is just as easy as getting in. You have the button right here on the shoulder of the captain's chair. You just push it and away the seat goes. The Telluride remains one of the largest in the class for cargo capacity. Behind the third row, you will find 21 cubic feet of space. That's going to tie with the new Grand Highlander. It's just a hair more than the Volkswagen Atlas, but it's not as much as the Chevy Traverse, which still is the biggest in this class at 23 cubic feet of space. Now, one major reason to get the Telluride over the Palisade is actually in this particular measurement, because the Palisade actually only has 18 cubic feet of space back here, and on the upper trims, it actually has a power folding third row seat. This is just a manual one, and once you fold that down, you'll actually have 46 cubic feet of space. Fold down the second row, which is easily done by the 2 buttons over there on the left side, and you'll get 87 total cubic feet of space. That's still not the biggest though, because the Chevy Traverse and the Toyota Grand Highlander will both swallow more behind the first row. 98.2 for the Traverse, 97.5 for the Grand Highlander. Taking a look around the interior of this SX Prestige X-Line model, note that this is the all-black interior, but unlike the new Honda Pilot, you can get this with more interesting options as well, like a dark mocha, a white, a 2-tone blue and white, and a sort of a beige option. Now, if we zoom in over here on the side door, you'll notice that we have height adjustable seat belts. We also have height adjustable headrests, but they don't pop in and out or anything like that. Over on the door panel, it is a pretty good mix of materials up top that is more of a squishy injection molded plastic up here. We have a nice thin sort of metal line right there with some wood trim up above that. The door handles themselves are metal and they do feel cold to the touch. And then down further, things start to get a little bit harder, but we do have a sort of softly padded spot for your elbow, and then the speaker grill for the Harman Kardon audio system right over there. Now, moving over to the dashboard, you'll notice we have this sort of wood finish. It's not real wood, but it has a silver color to it and looks pretty nice up against the black. Up top there, you'll find more injection molded plastic with some artificial stitching going on just there. Below that, though, we've got all hard plastics and a very decently sized glove box. The seats themselves are Napa leather with this really interesting stitching pattern. They are again heated and ventilated on this top trim. Now, moving on over to the center console, this is where the major change for the interior took place in the refresh. We now have the dual pane LCD setup with an LCD instrument cluster over there in front of the driver and a main 12.3-inch display for the infotainment system. That is now standard on every single trim level. There is no longer a smaller screen on offer. The one thing that didn't change, though, is the fact that wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto are still not here. You do still have to plug those in, but it's still nice to have, and there are no subscriptions required to keep things running like you'll find on the latest Toyota products. Kia also retained all of the hard buttons for climate and infotainment system features. I really appreciate that, though, of course, this is starting to look a little bit dated compared to newer Hyundai and Kia products, but it's still very functional. Everything is right where you expect it to be, and I really appreciate the star button right here, which allows you to program a certain feature for direct access. So in my particular instance, I always program that to be phone projection. So every time I get in the car, plug in my phone, I press that star button, and that will automatically launch Android Auto for me. Down here, I really like that we have these grab handles reminiscent of what you'll find in a Mercedes SUV product. And then behind this sort of trap door here, you'll find your Qi wireless charge pad, a 12-volt outlet, the port for your USB connection for Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and then a USB-C charge-only port right there. Then moving on down, you'll find a lot of black plastic, piano black plastic, if you will, with, scratches and fingerprint marks all over that. I'm not a fan of that, but that's what we're stuck with. We do have a traditional style shifter, no rotary option on this model because we don't have a hybrid or a plug-in hybrid like other Hyundai Kia products. But down further here, we do have a drive mode select knob, which gives you comfort, sport, smart, snow, and eco, as well as a 4x4 lock function. Right here is your engine automatic start-stop trigger right there. Auto brake hold, your electronic parking brake, and the button for your 360 camera, as well as the button to turn on and off your parking sensors. But if I hit that button right there, even while parked, I can pull up the camera system. So we've got a bunch of different views. On top trims like this, you will find this digital rear view mirror, which is activated by flipping the little tab under the mirror right here. And up here, these are the controls for the front and rear moonroofs. On the front, you can open and close it, but the shade itself is manual. On the right, this is the shade for the rear portion. Then over on the driver's side, we do have the same steering wheel as before. I do wish Kia had updated this to give it a more modern and fresh look like what we see on their newer products, but it's still a very functional wheel. We've got controls for your cruise control and the way to sort of navigate around that LCD cluster behind you. That's going to be on this right side, but move over to the left side and that will control your voice command, your audio mode, as well as volume and track forward and backward. This LCD instrument cluster is new for 2023. Before, only the Palisade was offered with such a feature, but this really makes this Telluride interior feel more up-to-date and modern, and it is very welcome in my eyes. In fact, I wouldn't have picked the Telluride over the Palisade before because it didn't have this feature, and now it is really great to see it here. On the right here, I can shuffle through what is going on in the center portion of the display. I can go up and down into various actual windows in those clusters, but this general view you're looking at right here is newer for the Hyundai and Kia portfolio. It's called Dynamic. But then you can also go back to the typical ones you're used to, like Classic A, which gives you the silver finish and sort of a purple accent. Classic B, which is a sportier look, has red accents and more of a industrial look. And then Classic C, which is sort of blue and has these tachometer and speedometer beams of light. They kind of look like lightsabers. That one's pretty cool as well. And this is back to that Dynamic, which gives you a horizon view with some cityscapes in the background, some mountains, and just a giant green field. Getting the Telluride out on the road, the first thing I want to point out before I get into the dynamics and everything is the fact that on the instrument cluster, if you have it in the dynamic mode, I totally missed this earlier, is the fact that if it's raining or doing any other inclement weather, it actually mimics that in the display. So in this sort of scape, this landscape we're looking at right here, it is raining and it has the rain coming down on what looks to be like the glass pane you're looking through to see it. That's a pretty neat touch. Now let's talk about this 3.8 liter V6. A lot of the competition out there is switching to 4-cylinder turbo or just 4-cylinder or hybrid options. The Telluride here and its Palisade sibling are strictly 3.8 liter V6s only, and I think this is something that people are really going to miss if they do eventually get rid of it for the next generation, because this engine is silky smooth, and despite what some people might say about its low-end torque, I find it to have a lot of grunt at the low end for a V6. Now, this is a higher displacement engine than some of the other V6s we're used to from like Honda, which has a 3.5. This 3.8 definitely feels a little bit more, I don't know, mean compared to the 3.5, and it accelerates rather quickly. It took me only 6.8 seconds to get to 60 miles per hour. And keep in mind, this is an all-wheel drive model, so this one does weigh a little bit more than the regular Tellurides, but I think that all-weather or that all-four-wheel grip you get off the line really helps with the acceleration, and I really don't know if a turbo 4-cylinder would satisfy me any more or any less, per se, than this V6 does. Now, braking is an area that I think the Telluride is literally the best in class for. Now, the Palisade has a very similar brake feel, but I haven't driven the Palisade as recently as I've driven this, obviously. They're probably very similar feeling, but I don't recall being this elated with how these brakes feel. in the Palisade. They also helped me get back from 60 miles per hour to 0 rather quickly, only 121 feet, which is a little bit less than I was expecting. And again, you feel very confident using these brakes at all speeds. Now, as you know, most of the options in this segment are going to be front-wheel drive based, like this Telluride, but there are a few that are rear-wheel drive based, like the Ford Explorer, the Grand Cherokee L from Jeep, and the brand new Mazda CX-90. And I have to say, I think dynamics-wise, handling-wise, this feels as good, if not better, than the Explorer. Not as good as the CX-90 and probably not as good as the Grand Cherokee L, but in terms of driving dynamics, when you turn this thing in a corner, body roll is really well kept under control. It stays relatively flat through the corners. The steering feel is nicely weighted for a three-row crossover. It just is really easy to drive. That's the big takeaway I've gotten from this car. It's just a really easy driving experience, but not so easy that it gets boring. I actually enjoy being behind the wheel of the car. Now, if you're out on the highway driving on long drives, Highway Drive Assist 2 is really nice. It's actually better in this than it was in the Ioniq 5 I drove it in last year. The ride quality too is really very polished. This is definitely more polished than the Ford Explorer and something like the Nissan Pathfinder, but the new Mazda CX-90, while it does have that rear-wheel drive nature to it, I found it to have more of a brittle ride than this. It was very premium feeling, but certain bumps would permeate into the cabin a little bit more than I'd like. That is not happening here in the Telluride. This is a very quiet place and a very smooth ride. And in terms of the quietness, I actually only measured 53 decibels in here at 50 miles per hour. That's way lower than what Alex has ever gotten out of this car. But again, keep in mind, we are driving in very different locations with very different conditions. But in general, this is a quiet place because we have the acoustic laminated glass on the windshield and the front two windows here on the side. But I have ridden in the Telluride in the back seat before. It does get louder in the second row and it gets a lot louder in the third row because there is no insulation really going on back there. But that's going to be for kids who are probably going to be playing with their devices or watching a movie or something, and they're not going to be complaining about that too much. They might complain if they find out that your friend got a Palisade and their third row is heated and this one isn't. They might complain about that. Fuel economy was honestly one of the biggest surprises for the Telluride, for me at least. The 3.8 V6, that is pretty much the largest V6 you'll find in this segment now. And even so, because it can switch between the normal and the Atkinson cycle, on the highway, if you're cruising on the highway or on a boulevard at a pretty consistent speed, you will see pretty decent MPG results. And with a combination of that kind of driving and city driving on my test loop around Detroit, I got 24.5 miles per gallon. Now that is not as good as a Highlander hybrid, and it probably won't be as good as the standard Grand Highlander hybrid, but the upcoming Toyota Grand Highlander with the Hybrid Max system will probably come in around those numbers, but we will have to see when we drive it for the first time. And that brings me back to the lack of a hybrid in this car. Yes, I really love this V6 and I love everything about the driving dynamics, but I think in order for them to compete with Grand Highlander and just Highlander in general, they're going to have to offer a hybrid. And with the way the industry is going, I would be shocked if they didn't offer at least the 1.6 turbo hybrid system you'll find in the Sportage. But I'd really love to see them offer the plug-in hybrid system as well, because currently there is no Highlander plug-in hybrid and there was no Grand Highlander plug-in hybrid announced. So if Kia could get in that space, they'd be right there with Mazda as some of the most exclusive three-row plug-in hybrids in this industry in general. What do I think of the Kia Telluride? Well, even with this 2023 refresh, it continues to be the discount Land Rover design that so many people have flocked to, and it's one of the reasons why the Telluride is so dang popular. And the Telluride has really sharp driving dynamics for a front-wheel drive big three-row SUV, but I have no problem saying that it is the most dynamic of the front-wheel drive options in this segment. The new Mazda CX-90 is now rear-wheel drive based, and because it's a Mazda, it is going to drive a little bit better, but it has an advantage now because of that new architecture. One specific area that I thought the Telluride outshone every single car in the class were with the brakes. These brakes were buttery smooth. Honestly, the best brakes I've used in any SUV of any size under $70,000. Fuel economy was actually surprisingly decent, but if you're looking for a hybrid or a plug-in hybrid or something just more focused on fuel efficiency, you'll have to go the Toyota or the Mitsubishi route, or if you want to go even further to a minivan, there's a Chrysler Pacifica for you. If you're looking for a family SUV with a passenger seat up front that's just as configurable or nearly as configurable as the driver's seat, look for the Telluride, because the Telluride has a very adjustable front passenger seat with two-way lumbar support and height adjustment. That is not something you always find in this segment. The second and third row seats are some of the largest in the segment. They are very comfortable, heated and second row captain's chairs on top trims. No heated third row like you find on the Hyundai Palisade. That is one reason you might want to go with that model. But in general, the Kia and the Hyundai both have some of the largest passenger compartments in the segment. The second row captain's chairs, though nice and comfortable, are not as great with big child seats as something like the Nissan Pathfinder or Volkswagen Atlas. Those models allow you to keep the seat in the same angle and push it forward so that you can actually leave the child seat in place. The Telluride and the Palisade both do not allow you to do that, so it's a little bit less flexible for those of you out there who have small children in car seats like that. The competition you see on your screen now are on the larger side for the segment and on the newer side, with the Palisade and the Telluride, of course, getting their refreshes last year, the new Honda Pilot getting a redesign for 2023, and the Volkswagen Atlas getting a major refresh for 2024, though we don't have pricing for the 2024 model year yet. So on your screen, I've got 2023 prices, which should be pretty close to what you'll find on that refresh. But as you can see, the Volkswagen does have the lowest base price at $36,445. Now, when it comes to Kia versus Hyundai, the Hyundai starts at about $20 less, but caps off at about $2,000 less than the Telluride, which is a little bit interesting because the Palisade gives you some features that you can't get on the Telluride, like those third row heated seats and power folding third row seats. The Pilot, however, has the Trailsport trim, which I would argue is the most off-road ready of all the options on this list. We would have to put them head-to-head with the X Pro Telluride to give you a real actual comparison, but somebody else out there has probably already done that, so go check that out and look over the internet and see what you can find on that matter. But they're both very capable vehicles. The Pilot is just a little bit more focused on the ruggedness when you do go for that Trailsport trim. The Atlas, it's not going to be as rugged oriented, and it also doesn't have the nicest interior in this segment. That's definitely going to go to the Korean twins. But again, its top price actually is not the highest here. That would be the Telluride. And the Telluride's top trim is going to give you those off-road tires that apparently, I haven't driven it, but apparently they have a little bit of a firmer ride. So if you want something a little bit smoother at the top end, pretty much everything else on this list is going to cut it. The Telluride might disappoint you. Or you could just go down to an SX Prestige X-Line trim like what I had, which retains the buttery smooth ride. The one that's not on this list, but is definitely the talk of the town, is the new Toyota Grand Highlander. We will be driving it later this month, but until then, you can really bet on the Korean twins both as being the top choices in this segment. It really comes down to, do you like power folding third row seats and the third row heated seats and the design of the Palisade, or do you prefer the more rugged Land Rover look of the Telluride? That really is the main difference between the two, because everything else about them is excellent and really well done by Kia and Hyundai. And they do have a second generation coming, so if you were worried that these models were going to go all electric with their replacements like the EV9 or the Ioniq 7, which comes out later this year, don't worry, Kia and Hyundai are definitely working on internal combustion engine replacements for both of these, so all of you out there that are concerned about that will have somewhere to go in 2024 or 2025 when those models do arrive. But the one thing we don't know for sure is if hybrid options are coming. The Toyota Grand Highlander will have two hybrid options. The Atlas is only going to have a 2-liter turbo 4-cylinder going forward after 2024. The Pilot will be the one that remains with a V6 that we know for sure, because of course it just came out with that V6 option. That is a new V6 for Honda, so you can bet it's going to stick around for the foreseeable future. Let me know what you think about all that in the comment section below. Are you Team Palisade or Team Telluride? I'm personally Team Palisade. I do like its interior a little bit better. It's a little bit more luxurious, which I prefer, but I do love the refreshed Telluride. I think they really fixed the front end design for me to make it look more like the original concept, which I thought looked really good. Now it does look like that, and I think they're both pretty equal on the outside. It's just the Palisade's interior wins me over just a hair over the Telluride's. Which one would you go with, and would you pick any of these other options over both? Or are there any options outside of this list that you prefer over all of these? Let me know what you think in the comments section below. Make sure to like this video if you're a fan of three-row crossovers, subscribe for more in-depth detailed car reviews like this, and follow us on all of our social media platforms and the Alex on Auto's website for all the written reviews. As always, thanks for watching and take care.